Good.
Okay, so we'll call the Thursday, September 4th meeting of the Underhill Planning Commission to order. Does anyone have any changes to the agenda? David?
Well, I just want to, if there's time and if it's appropriate to do so, to introduce a motion to drop the, or a resolution to drop the 400 foot.
I think we'll do, if it's okay with you, we're gonna do that like very next thing after we confirm there's no public comment, because then we'll go to the public hearing feedback regarding the drafts. Is that good?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, fine.
Anyone else? There's no one from the public on. Brings us right back to where David was. We're going to talk about public hearing feedback about the Underhill land use regs. Larry, do you have a suggestion as to how we do this? Obviously, I know I know many of us took notes, myself included, but is there a particular way you think we should?
Well, I think we should go right into the sawmill regs, not because we have to rehash everything that was said, but more because I would just like to get the sense of the group about whether overall they thought that what was shared at the hearing was helpful, and if there was any themes that you thought emerged, any outliers that don't go with the themes, like, just to sort of summarize the main perspectives that we talked about. And then, think about whether we heard anything that would maybe have us think about making any substantial changes in that, because that was really the only one that we got any significant comment on. Was that okay?
We're just starting to go through the public feedback, Zach, from last meeting.
Sure.
From the public hearing, and whether we think any changes should be made to our draft before it goes to the to the lawyer and the select board.
Yes.
Although it's already at the lawyer, right?
Yeah, I think it's just been staying there for a while until they get to it.
Did anyone, like, specific to sawmills, we'll just go one at a time, specific to sawmills, firewood processing, did anyone think the public hearing resulted in specific change that we should make to the draft language we already have? Or do people think our draft language generally represented the tone of public?
Distance and sound kept coming up, but I don't know where to fall on that. It's like, you just keep the placeholder there and let public comment and select board change it, nix it. I don't know. Attorney might nix it. I mean, it's just a placeholder right there.
It is. I mean, it's a draft. So, as I said at the beginning, it's a work in progress. And I don't think that there's any sort of real hard and fast, sort of scientifically based measurement tools that are going to resolve this. I think it's really more of a judgment call that we made. And I think the distances as a proposal are fine. I feel like the sound levels, I don't really think, having gone through different options, that using any noise standard other than what's already in the town nuisance ordinance is feasible, because, we can't enact a different standard for this type of use that then would apply to any other use in town. I feel like there was definitely some gaps in understanding, maybe would be the way I would characterize it, in terms of what the people in the room who came to talk about it, what they knew or understood about the process. Because we've seen that people seem to want to relitigate stuff that happened in the past that we can't do anything about it. And by putting that stuff aside, I was saying before we started the meeting that I feel like there were people here who said that they would oppose the town adopting any standards on sawmills or wood processing operations. And I don't think they really get that, in the situation we have now, it's sort of the Wild West, with no regulation and no standards in place, that puts everybody at a disadvantage. If you have a business that includes running this kind of equipment, you don't really know what to expect because there's no standards. The DRB has no standards. And if you're an adjoining property owner, a nearby property owner, and you feel like this is something that would be a nuisance, again, with no standards, you don't really have a say. So I feel like the people who were objecting to the notion of enacting standards didn't really understand that. But that aside, I feel like it would be helpful to go forward with this in general, even though there may be some tweaking that goes on at the select board level. People will have I think probably the select board can expect the same kind of crowd with the same kind of views expressed, and maybe we can be a little more clear about the benefits of having a standard versus not having a standard, before, to prep the select board for that hearing. But I don't know that I heard it. I didn't hear anything in the feedback that would make me think that we're going down the wrong path. I feel like those people who were here who said loud and clear that this is an established use in town already, and that, the neighbors and residents should not poo-poo that, the importance of this business to the people who run these kinds of businesses, as well as, the impact on local supply of firewood and other processed wood products, because there's a lot of folks who use wood stoves to heat their homes in Underhill and in surrounding communities. And this is a traditional use of the land. And I think that, when Williamson said, well, last year it only ran for a total of 59 days out of 365. I mean, I don't know if people heard that, but, that's not an enormous impact compared to some things, anybody who moved to Underhill as their first landing in a rural community thinking that it was going to be all quiet all the time,
Yeah.
It's like that. No, actually rural areas are often louder than, city or suburban areas in terms of power equipment and, barking dogs and, noise from the firing range and all kinds of things. So I think there's a certain amount of like undercurrent of stuff that is caused by people who don't have the same understanding of the need for regulation that people sitting around this table do, and don't need to sound patronizing, but I think that's just the reality of it. And I think it's on balance better to have a standard that balances the property rights with business interests to offer this type of product and service. And I think the standard does that, and we'll see how that holds up through the process. I think that's my overview, what I heard.
Thank you, Art.
And there are draft minutes. I don't know if anybody had a chance to review them. They're really long. It's 7.5 pages. But I think this does capture the different perspectives, so that when we pass this along to the select board, we'll do a copy of these minutes so that they'll have a chance to to hear everything that was said or see to read about it, and they may have some questions of their own. But I think it's going to be important for at least one of us to be present when the select board takes this up.
Yeah.
Because we want to make sure that they have the same understanding that we developed through many discussions and through the hearing.
Yeah, I don't mind going if someone else wants to go too.
Is there a date for it yet, or is it all?
No, we have to get on their agenda.
So it could be after your.
It's presumably in October, early October.
I would think we'd want to get this moving, in October.
So I had a question on just the draft that we had put together, because I wasn't here at the, when it was all kicked off. Was it modeled after some other language that we found somewhere else?
Sort of, yeah. Actually, Bart was really helpful in this respect. So he did some research for other towns in Vermont and other parts of the country and shared it with me. And so I definitely used that when I was drafting the rules. And, I think the rules are a little stripped down from what some of the models that you provided, but that's okay. I mean, what works in a town in New Hampshire or out in Montana, I think was another one, is not necessarily going to work in Underhill. So, and it is kind of experimental too. I mean, I think this is a new area for the town to have a regulation. So it'll be, perhaps even after it's enacted, assuming the select board likes what they see, I think it may require some tweaking as we go forward. But, the whole idea of like Chapter 4 of the land use regulations calls out and sets forth standards for certain kinds of things that are potentially intrusive. Like earth extraction operation is a great example, or, gasoline service stations is another one. I mean, these are things that could cause objections by some people if they happen to live next door. And so, yes, it's important to spell out what are the standards. So if someone wants to start doing one of these activities, they have to subject themselves to a process with the DRB to get a conditional use permit. And, I think it's really appropriate for the town to spell those things out. There's some kinds of things, there's some kinds of land uses that some towns can regulate under Vermont law that may choose to just ban them. An example would be when I first started working in Bolton a bunch of years ago, there was provisions for junkyards, salvage yards for automobiles and other vehicles. And the only place to put such an operation was in the floodplain down along Route 2 in the village. And, we talked about it at the planning commission, and we just said, we could just say no junkyards in town, because, however you slice them, however they're set up and managed, there's going to be a risk of hazardous fluids from old cars and trucks leaking into the water table. And when that area floods, because it wasn't a question of if, it's like when the next time it floods, waters come up, and then there's like leaking oil, leaking antifreeze, leaking God knows what. It's a nightmare. It's for critters and for the town to have to deal with cleanup with that. So they said, no, you're right. We don't want to do junkyards. So they stripped that right out of the regulations. It's like, now it just says there's no junkyards allowed in Bolton, and people were good with that. So, Chapter 4 is the place where we regulate certain kinds of uses that could be noxious or problematic for residents in town, for the community, and it's appropriate to have a standard for this type of operation, which we know there's a need for, and it's been happening in this town.
So I think, what my question was going to be was, what was the distance that was used in the research that Bart had identified?
It's all over the place. I mean, that's the main thing for me too, Zach, is like, did we get that stuff right? I don't know. I mean, the select board's elected. Like, maybe they have some better view, or think they have a better view of like whether those are the correct things from past experience. Like, Bob's been on the select board forever, right? Maybe he's come across, and Dan has. Maybe they've come across similar things in the past, because they were from like, correct me if I'm wrong, Bart, but they were from like nothing basically, right? Like no setbacks whatsoever for sound to like.
And some were only 50 feet or 100 feet.
Yeah, I think what we have to remember is there's another layer here with the conditional use permit that they have to get. So, the DRB is going to go out there with all the adjoining neighbors and look at the site. And then these are just minimum guidelines that would eliminate certain possibilities. So.
Yeah, Tim Frost had sent an email that I just looked at this afternoon, where he pointed out that from the standpoint of the process that we've laid out here, that distance minimums may not be relevant if we are also using the noise ordinance. However, the ZA will not be able to measure the noise until the permit is approved and the equipment is operating.
That's true.
How do you determine what is admissible at the time of the permit application? If it is too noisy at 300 feet, it would have to be relocated to a distance where the decibel levels are more compliant. That's a great question.
Yeah.
It's kind of, Bart's original disagreement with certain setbacks is like, you don't know, but at the same time, where do you even start? Like, you kind of have to put like a general starting place, like no closer than, right? It's just a minimum, right? It doesn't mean like it has to be at that number. It could be greater than that. It just can't be less than that. But like, to have nowhere to just even like throw a flag in the ground and like start. Is the hard part,
Right. But if you think about Gordon, he already had the machine up and running in that particular spot, so everybody could check how noisy it was. But if somebody's applying for a permit and they don't even own the machinery yet, how are we going to determine what the noise level is? I mean, that's like.
Yeah, I think, there are some parameters. I think that, Gordon's experiences maybe illustrates that, the equipment that is used in these type of wood processing operations does have some broad parameters within which it operates. Some are a little more noisy, maybe some are a little quieter, but, within a range, it's possible to, go to a dealership who sells these things and, with a decibel meter and stand, 300 or 500 feet away,
Right.
and at least get a ballpark idea. And probably that's in the manufacturer's specs.
Yeah,
for this
spec
type
sheet
of equipment.
probably has
Spec sheet.
that
So,
on there.
yeah, so you have that, and you have, as Jeff says, it's what we specify as a minimum distance, but it could be farther away. And when someone reads what the minimum distance is in the rules, and they say, well, just to be safe, I'm going to double that and put it way deeper in on the property than the minimum distance, so that itself is a form of guidance. And it may still be too loud, and you won't know that until it's up and running, but at least you have some guidance over how much noise the equipment generates, and then what type of distance is sort of the minimum guideline for the town to get a permit, and then you just have to wait and see, if the permit is granted and the operation goes into effect. See what the actual noise levels are at property lines, because there may still be problems, and we can't, write a guarantee that says that, to somebody who gets a permit to do this, you will be allowed, to operate. We have to say it is conditional. The permit is conditional. It's why it's called a conditional use permit, and you have to, the permit will state, you have to operate between these hours. You can't go after whatever 6 o'clock in the evening, or you can't go on weekends. We might want to look at that piece.
Doesn't it say you can only operate for like 2 hours a day?
It does say that.
Like
No.
who's measuring?
You
Like who's gonna stand there with a stopwatch?
Where does it say that?
There was something about like, not,
You can't
Well,
exceed a certain noise level.
Well, no, it was continuous use. You
Yeah.
couldn't have,
Yeah.
like, was it 3 hours, 4 hours, something like that?
well, it was 2 hours.
Above a certain noise level.
Yeah, maybe it was above a certain level. I just don't remember
Yeah,
anymore.
and I think
It's above a certain.
Yeah, which makes it even that much more difficult to measure and count, because somebody's gotta stand there with their frequency meter and
Well, I think,
take a reading and time it at the same time.
I think, well, I hope what doesn't happen.
That's why the minimum distance, I think, is actually really important. Because if you set it at 300 and you take a reading and they're using the lowest setting on the wood chipper, and then the guy that's taking the readings leaves and they crank it back up again, like it can end up being important. It's going to be difficult to measure. There's lots of, like I said a couple of weeks ago, we were in here, I was like, I'm in favor for very simple rules. You remember? And this is another example, I think, where it's kind of complex and difficult. It's going to be difficult for the select board or anybody to enforce.
Well, it
Yeah,
ultimately
frankly.
relies on people being good neighbors to a certain
Mhm.
extent.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You can mess around with the testing in all kinds of ways, and then you can end up in a bad relationship with your neighbor where they're out all the time with what seems to be happening with the current one. And I really hope that our rules don't make that situation continue. That would be
Yeah,
unfortunate. I hear what you're saying, though, Zach.
I did hear from one resident who participated in the hearing as well, who said that he thought that we should that we should stipulate in the standards that the town should require that a neutral third party be hired at the applicant's expense to measure the decibel levels.
I think we talked about that
Mhm.
before.
We did
Yeah.
talk
We
about it.
did.
And I mean, I responded to him, I said, look, one of the things that came out during the hearing is that the noise levels are very contingent on, which way the wind is blowing, the terrain, the humidity, relative humidity, whether the leaves are on or off the trees, what the geography is in terms of there's, berms or ridges between where you are and where the equipment is operating. And so what we thought, I think most people understood that you can't just take a single decibel reading, single noise level. You have to take it, several times over a period of several days. And, to hire somebody from Burlington or, Albany or wherever to come up with a fancy decibel meter and take multiple readings over multiple days and pay their expenses and their hourly rate, it seems to me to be an undue burden. So in the interest of keeping it simple, I feel like it's incumbent on the town to have an up-to-date noise level equipment, measurement equipment, and it's a zoning administrator enforcement issue. The zoning administrator's here 4 days a week. She can, grab, when she gets a complaint, she can grab the device and go right out to the site and take several measurements and over a couple different days. And that is the reading, that will be the standard about whether someone is operating in compliance with their permit or not. And if they're not in compliance with their permit and they really are creating a nuisance that violates the town's ordinance, then, she has the authority to issue a warning letter and eventually a notice of violation if things don't change. And those are tools that can result in an amicable resolution of the issue, because it's almost unheard of for that kind of a process to result in the town levying heavy fines. Usually the applicant or the property owner is aware that they need to clean up their act and change their behaviors in order to avoid getting in trouble with the town. They want to do that, and they will. And therefore, people can get relief from a bad situation if you're a neighbor, and if you're the owner, make some adjustments, and then you can keep operating your business. So it's not like your investment's at risk because a single person complains. There's a neutral process that gets carried out by which somebody who has a concern can have the ZA go in with their noise meter and see what the actual noise levels are, and then enforce as appropriate.
I really take your comment though, very like that's the heart of it, right? So maybe when we go to the select board and present these, I mean, maybe that's the kind of umbrella comment, right? When they ask what we did, we were trying to find the balance you were just talking about, and hopefully we got it right. And if they disagree, then, they can revise it appropriately.
Yeah. So another question, the setup that all of these folks were upset about, that was Gordon's original setup, right?
Well, no, it's both. So the very, very short version is Dave Sills. That's the current setup. So basically Gordon had it in one place down by Pleasant Valley Road.
Oh, and then he moved.
And that's where the two neighbors, Russ, the guy who called in, and Nick and Heather, who were here, that's where it started. He then moved it, cutting out tons of facts for brevity. He then moved it up to his house. By his house, he's a lot closer to Dave and Pam Sills.
Right.
So there were people here from both situations.
Right. And if I
Dave.
remember correctly, from Dave's house, it's 300 feet, right?
300 or 350 feet. I actually kept his map and it's in my truck, and I feel like it was 350, but yeah, either way.
And he's not happy.
Dave, there's definitely
Do we know how
there's
far?
current tension in the situation without question.
Yeah, do we know how far it was from the Pleasant Valley?
Oh, it was
50
like
feet.
100 feet, yeah,
100
50 feet
yeah.
from their
Way,
side of their
way
house. Like right there.
Way closer.
But didn't Dave have measurements that showed that it was like?
Well, Dave has a recording, but to present it clearly, like Dave run in a recording and then Gordon said, well, yeah, but he wasn't saying Dave was doing this on purpose. I think what he was saying was like, you playing the recording at the meeting by turning up the volume so everyone can hear it.
No, but I thought he had pictures of.
Oh, he has pictures.
Sensor readings that he had taken, but obviously.
Maybe Dave had that too. Dave definitely had the recording. I don't remember the pictures.
No, I remember the recording.
He was just using his cell phone, but he didn't have like a professional decibel meter.
Yeah.
I do think that happened in situation one, though. I do think there were noise readings in the original.
I think it was
Complaint.
because they have like attorney stuff.
They have attorneys and it's quite involved.
Yeah, I mean, either way, like that's like its own.
But no, so then there's the other issue that there's 500 feet from schools, and 500 feet from, right, or sorry, 300 feet from a residence.
So I think
So-
Dave commented on that.
He did, so why don't we just clean that up, and set it at 500.
500 for everything.
Dave, that makes Dave a little bit happier.
I object. I don't want to say, 400 was too much, as far as I'm concerned. And, once again, the state encourages the working landscape. And these are just little mom and pop operations. And the big one, on the River Road, they don't run all the time either, but they put a lot of wood out there, and who complains about that?
What if we do this, in the interest of getting this to the select board? Because I'm gonna go, and anyone else is welcome, obviously. What if we say, look, I think Jeff used the word placeholder.
Yeah.
What if we say, look, these were our best guesses on the distances. To be clear, there were disagreements on this. People had different feelings. We feel like we were trying to land at a middle number. We've seen everything from like 50 feet to, you can't do it at all, right? So like, we don't know if we got it right. This is a bit of a placeholder for you, select board. And then we shift it over to them for their consideration. They deal with the public a lot more than we do, so I think it'd be very interesting to get their read on this stuff. And for all we know, the select board, I know Larry doesn't want this to happen, but one thing the select board could do is say like, yeah, this is going for a vote to the town.
Mhm.
I mean, that's a possible.
It is, yeah.
I don't know how Larry would discount the probabilities, but I don't think it's zero that the select board decides to send it to the town. If they say, look, let's let the public speak. So.
It just seems to me though that there's an opportunity to mitigate it with the hours of operation though too. I think that that's less invasive, because if you're 300 feet away from a door, but you know it's only going to be operating for 3 to 4 hours a day, that feels like you can mitigate that.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes. Or people just learn to live with it.
Well, and it's specific for each applicant, right? Like,
Yes.
like I always mention, the guy in the middle of the woods on 500 acres, with nobody around him on Irish Settlement or Upper English, his hours of operation are this big, but the guy that's on
Yes.
Pleasant Valley next to 10 homes,
Yeah.
it's, a much finer timeline of when he can do things.
I guess hours of operation, and I'm partially trying to convince everyone I should take that back to send this to the select board and call these placeholders. I think that's, again, and we could all agree on like some bullet points we want to send to them. I think getting their feedback as people who deal with the public all the time on like hours of operation, we can say like, look, this is our best guess. There were differences of opinion. We think these are the key levers that you, select board, need to decide on. To be frank, they never do what we ask them to do. So whatever, no offense, select board. So whatever we send them, they're gonna tweak it.
Well, I'm just
So,
saying
That's fair.
yeah,
to the point of hours of operation, like the conditional use permit itself could
Mhm.
vary that beyond it.
well, that would be my overriding point to them, is what Zach said, like, we tried to find the right balance. Here are the levers we can move.
Yeah.
But what we tried to create was a system that was that provided just enough certainty, but it's flexible enough so the DRB can deal with it.
Right.
That's our goal.
Yeah.
So I got a question. Wouldn't it be wise to send this, has the DRB seen this?
Yes.
Yeah, they've reviewed it.
Charlie's reviewed it twice.
Okay, so they're no good with it.
I mean, I won't say he agreed with every single word, but, he did have the opportunity to provide feedback and did provide feedback, and that resulted in a couple of changes.
And Brad has seen it as well. But again, Brad had a very different view on what the distance should be, right? That's the thing about this stuff, right?
Yeah.
Like, we're never gonna have a perfect draft.
Mhm.
And the select board's definitely gonna have their own view, right? Like, what's the last thing we took to the select board? Where they like instantly shot me down?
Oh, is it current or no?
I can't remember.
Yeah, it was a tier 1B.
Yes,
Oh, yeah,
great, the map. Yeah, they're like, no, thanks.
No.
So, this is, I'm sure they're gonna have their own opinions on what this should be.
So we're not necessarily in agreement, but we are all in alignment.
That's a nice way to say it. We think this is a good framework.
Right.
There's differences of opinion on some of these distances and hours of operation. We're trying to create a flexible framework. Blah, blah, blah. Everything I just said. Here, you, select board, what do you think about this?
So this, just to be clear, this is, say it's 300 feet. It's 300 feet from the operation to a door of the other.
To a off-site residence.
Residence, not to the boundary line.
Well, but the noise measurement will take place at the property boundary line. So, that fixes that as a defined point.
Right.
Because, again, you could take noise measurements right next to the equipment when it's operating. You could take it 300 feet away, but the point is what's the impact on neighbors, occupied residences at a distance from the property line? So, that again gives the zoning administrator some very specific guidance about, how to take the measurements. And then, when the ZA responds to a complaint, I've been a zoning administrator and been through enforcement processes. They have to document everything they do. So they'll take the noise measurements and make note of them, date, time, and where they were, take pictures. They'll have the complaint spelled out. And typically they won't put together a warning letter until they're really clear path of evidence, just like a police officer collecting evidence on the scene of a crime. And then they will make that part of the record so that when they issue a notice of violation, it's really clear, like what happened. It wasn't just one person's opinion, and here are the facts of what happened. And then if if they start to then take the next step and they, have to issue civil fines, then, that's all something that would be defensible in court, because it's it's like an affidavit saying this is what I found when I investigated the complaint. If someone calls the zoning administrator with a completely bogus complaint, like, claims that all these things happened and actually didn't happen, and the zoning administrator can learn that going on site, with a camera and with a decibel meter, then they can just, write back to the complainant and say, hey, I followed through, did the investigation, I'm not seeing what you reported, and pretty much it ends there. Because there are people who, will do anything to shut down something they don't like. I think business owners that we made an investment in equipment and, brought materials to the site and, taken on contracts to provide a service and a product, they don't want to have to walk away from that whole investment just because someone has a gripe against them. So it has to be based on facts. And that's what the zoning administrator's job to enforce once there's a standard and a permit's been issued. So I think that's all good. Right now, all of that's in very squishy grounds because there's no standard. So, it's like one person's opinion, one person's story against another person's story. And I don't think that serves the town or property owners or the people running these businesses.
I just think the current situation is very unfortunate.
Yeah.
Hopefully I'm hoping it helps prevent it somewhat going forward.
Yeah.
But
Okay. You want to talk about the other?
yeah, ADUs. Does anyone named David Edson have anything to say about this subject?
Raise a motion, basically.
You don't have to make a motion because we're going to make a motion at the end to send it all to the select board. So you can just, we'll just see if there's any disagreement to your point.
I agree.
Everybody.
I do too.
Get rid of the 400.
Yeah. Very less. So
Good.
I agree.
Yeah, we don't have to get
That's-
into it.
you got the spirit of democracy right there.
Very nice. Good. In
So
favor of that.
anyone, okay, anything else on ADUs?
So this is to strip the
Just
400
drop the
foot thing from the
Yes.
town. Yeah.
That takes us to, I know Tim had a comment on recreational trails. This takes us, in his email, this takes us to event venues. There were no questions or comments from in the public, so it seems like anyone, seems like we're good. Okay. Do you want to, Tim's made this comment before, but since you have the email printed out, would you mind sharing it when you're done writing? Sorry.
Who is Tim?
Tim Frost. The guy who's always here?
Oh.
Yeah.
So Tim,
Our Tims. That would have been a better way to describe it.
Tim said in his email, I will reiterate my thought that for non-commercial trails, the town permit should not be required for stream encroachments and wetlands because they are both under state jurisdiction, not the town's. It should be the property owner's responsibility for determining whether they need a permit or not. I get his point, I take his point, and it's a fair point. How much focus should the regulations have on laying out to residents what the standards are that they ought to follow and pay attention to when there's already state jurisdiction on a particular thing? And my view is that the regulation should be as self-explanatory as possible. In that, my understanding of the history of this, the legislative history, and when it came to this commission, is that there was some confusion about whether the town had authority to regulate stream crossings and building bridges over streams that were associated with specific trails across private property, and that the current regulations are unclear about that. And therefore, it was an attempt to balance regulating trails versus recognizing that they're there and there are going to be probably more of them over time. But that, we should sort of clearly state, what are the thresholds for needing a permit and not needing a permit. And I feel like the three-part division that we proposed makes sense to me. I don't know if we're ever going to have like a fee-for-service type trail system in Underhill.
Seems unlikely.
But, it seems like there's there are already, and there's going to be more trails that people use on private land with the permission of the landowner that could have environmental impacts. And to me, it's important to understand this regulation is really mostly about protecting stream and wetland ecology and balancing the interests of recreational trail users with protecting the resource. And so, we have the rule to do that to protect resources, but it doesn't really recognize where trails enter.
Also protecting the landowner from his liability
Yes.
with the state.
So I think it makes, to Tim's point, I think it makes sense to just say that these types of encroachments do require state review and possibly a permit, even though if we never said that, it would still, that requirement would still be there under state statute, but a lot of landowners aren't aware of that. And this is one area where the state does pay attention, and people should have a heads up that, this is something that they have to think about if they're going to expand a trail or extend a trail across a brook, with a small bridge or something, because it does get into an area that they could get in trouble if they didn't know about it and didn't go through that process.
Should something official be given to the property owner in order to avoid the liability issue? I'm not sure. I'm trying to recall what's all written there, but I don't recall anything about that. But the property owner is going to be the one that's going to be responsible in the end if the state comes in and says this is a violation. So something official from the state saying this is okay, basically, we're not violating anything if this goes through, and then given to the property owner in order to exempt him from.
Yeah, I mean, the state does have information on the ANR website about regulating encroachments on streams and wetlands. It's a little daunting to get through that. And so I think it would be appropriate for the town to have a handout, like an information sheet that summarizes, here's the areas where the state has jurisdiction. You might want to consider having a waiver, liability waiver form that you ask trail users to sign. A lot of places that do have trail systems that cross private land have like a little website that has a clickable, downloadable link to that everyone has to click on to sign the release of liability, the waiver, in order to then use the system, whether or not they charge a fee for it. I know that all of Nordic centers that I've ever used and all the downhill ski areas that I've ever been a skier at have that waiver liability now. So we could have, once we have the rule in place, we could have an informational sheet that summarizes those things and advises people who are building a trail or expanding a trail that's already in place that, here's what the town's rules are, here's where you go to find more information about the state rules, and, you might want to think about having a waiver for users of the trail system, just so that, it's a buyer beware type of situation. Most people will probably know that at some level, but there may be people who are new to town and bought a piece of property with trails already on it, who not familiar with that whole overlay of regulations that apply to them and haven't thought about liability.
Right. And there's almost an interest in the people that want to use the trail in order for it to go through.
Yeah.
And if I'm not saying this would happen necessarily, but somebody may want to fudge it a little bit, and then the state comes in and says, no, we said this, but now you're interpreting it that way. No, it's this way.
Yeah, I mean, I'm clear. For me, it's clear that we don't want to get in between the state and the property owner who is applying for that state review of a stream crossing or a wetland encroachment. But we do want to make them aware that it exists and that they should expect to go through it as part of a process for laying a new trail or expanding a trail.
It's not to get into all this kind of legalese, which is what it's going to come down to. But I don't know. I think you want to.
Getting back to your point about the waiver, is the landowner protected if, say, a mountain biker doesn't sign the waiver?
Vermont has some state law that's pretty pro. It's whatever, it's whatever protects the, there's apparently, I'm not so much here. My understanding is a lot of these private trails can exist without the waivers, even if, maybe best practice would be to have one, because it's kind of like use at your own risk in Vermont. That's like the default position in state law. Not an expert on it. No idea what it says. This is just what I've been told by other people. Because if you look at it, there's a lot of private trails that people let other people use and don't seem to worry too much about it. So
The state did relax the property owner's liability for people wandering on their property or whatever, basically.
yeah.
About 10 years ago, so maybe it was 15.
I mean, I know on the stow trails, they have 10-foot high mountain bike jumps, and you're not signing a waiver. So. There's got to be some law that's protecting.
I mean, most of our neighbors, you know, since we moved in, they're like, yeah, go, you can snowshoe our trails wherever you want, this and that. And I mean,
Good idea.
I never really thought about, but there's, you know, but it's the same thing as like if you have, you know, kids and your kids' friends come over and hurt themselves on the swing set, like it's kind of like.
Yeah, and mountain biking on rugged trails is inherently a dangerous sport. I mean,
Yeah.
no way around that. And so, you know, you assume that, you know, 99% of the users, people who practice that sport are aware of the risks. And, you know, hopefully they're all wearing helmets and knee pads and they're aware that they can go over the handlebars at any time and that if they get hurt, it's on them. But, you know, there's that like 0.5% who, you know, people up from New York City who just like will sue at the drop of a hat. And you can't stop that, you know, no matter what waiver you might get people to sign. It's like you can put up warning signs at the trailheads and people will just ignore them and just go bombing down the trail at way too high a speed on poor equipment and not have helmets on. And they're going to get hurt. It's like, it's like people in downhill ski areas, you know, they're going to ski into trees and into you know, snowmaking equipment. And, you know, no matter how much you put cushions around them and stuff, it's like, and you can't put a cushion around every tree on the edge of every ski trail. It's like, that's ridiculous. So I used to work in the field of traumatic brain injury rehab, and I was at a conference once, and this doctor was presenting about protective equipment for football players, because you probably all read about the CTE, that people get hit in the head a lot, repeated concussions that ended up sustaining long-term brain damage and disability. And so someone at the conference said to this noted expert, like, so how big a helmet with how much cushioning would you have to wear if you were an NFL player, like a linebacker or somebody, you know, on the line, front line, offensive line, who was constantly in collisions, like all the time, every day that they were playing. And he said, well, you know, it would be about 15 feet wide. Yeah, you can't really design a helmet with current technology to protect players 100%. So, you know, it's a risky world. It is what it is. And, you know, you want people to be thoughtful and considerate of others, but ultimately people would have to take responsibility for their own behaviors and the risks that they take.
Thank you, Larry. Anything else on this, or does someone want to make a motion that we send these to the select board? That's the appropriate motion, right?
Well, it is when we get to that.
Subject to the lawyers.
Yeah, that's the thing. So, you know, I think that the most problematic piece of all four of the sets of regulations we proposed was the 400-foot rule. And so if with that removed, I don't know that the lawyer's going to have any major, you know, feedback that would change what we're proposing at this stage. But we don't know, and we won't know until we hear back from the lawyers. So
is your advice that we kind of put these in a box and set them aside until the first week of October?
I think so.
All right, never mind. As usual, Larry's right, Brian's wrong. We can get that in the minutes, usually.
And all of these still have to keep like slowly lingering in our possession, right?
No, we're, as far as I'm concerned now, these are now tabled and off until, if the lawyer comes back and says, yeah, you all need to fix these 2-3 things, but as they are, this is what's going to go to the select board. Do we need a cover memo or something?
And that would be wise. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, we have already a report that summarizes and the explanatory charts that I prepared.
Yeah.
But I think a cover memo that sort of wraps it all up and ties it with a bow would be helpful. That would be maybe talking points mostly for you if you're presenting these to the select board and when you present these to the select board. Because and I think
you're willing to.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So I have a month to do that.
So. Okay. Well, thanks everyone. that takes us to Zach. Survey and background handout drafts. First, thank you to you and Tavid for all the time you spent on these.
Yeah, it was awesome. It's great.
I guess I know you guys
Yeah,
spent a
great.
ton of time.
Very clear.
Thank you. Hopefully it's in good shape. We've already chatted about this once. We tried to incorporate the changes. I think we spent in the previous draft, there were lots of comments around how we're identifying where people live in Underhill or whether in a neighboring town. So Tavid tried to better select what those areas are here. Do you guys have a draft of this?
I have,
If you wanna-
I have all three of these up.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess going to the survey itself,
Okay.
if you can get a question too.
Yep. There we go. Question.
I don't know the town well enough yet to say that we have it all covered and this makes any sense. I seem to remember that nobody really liked the River Road corridor or Route 15 corridor statement, so. Is that clear for folks or would you want to change that still?
You're looking at the survey right now.
Well,
Yeah,
specifically
question
the neighborhoods.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't think it makes any sense to chop this up any more than it already is. I think this is good, personally.
Okay.
Yeah, because people can always use the other line if they feel that their home is in a part of.
Not
town.
represented.
Not called out as much. And we are gonna have, I mean, right now there's this www.xxx. We are gonna have web pages set up that people can click on. So, for example, in question 3, it's the link is gonna go to right to the info sheet, this one here, just so that, we wanna give people ways to loop back to read the background information if they haven't already done so. So we're gonna supply that in a number of different ways.
Is there another, this is fine, it's obviously, for 98% of the people that want to read a one pager, but is there gonna be an additional link somewhere in there that takes you to the full blown study that Jericho did, or?
I think we can do that, yeah. I mean, I
That's a
think
good idea.
there will be a page on the town website that will anchor.
Those engineer people in the room that have to read
Yeah.
every page.
There will be a page on the town website that anchors this whole project, including the information handouts and links to that kind of information for people who want to know a lot more. But I think what we're trying to organize against here, by being thoughtful about what information we provide at the front end, is people just sort of dismissing the idea out of hand without even really understanding what is being proposed. So the information cover sheet, I think, tries to cover the bases in that with a question and answer, frequently asked questions and an overview. But then we'll also have a landing page that will provide more depth for people who want that.
I have a comment about the information sheet. So it was my understanding, and I read it today. I wasn't here for the meeting where you discussed this, the first draft, a couple meetings ago, right? You discussed it. Do we need to make it clear that even if you live in the flats and this goes through, you do not need, you're not required to hook up to it? Is that information in there?
I think it says it's an option.
It's one of the questions.
Okay, yeah, the questions that, I think that's really important for people to understand that, okay, it is in there. Okay, well, I kind of, maybe I skipped over that.
Is there a way to preemptively socialize the information sheets prior to the survey going out?
What do you mean by that?
Like if they show up at Jericho Market or in places where people can access them and pre-read it, like maybe a month before the survey goes out, so people have some level of understanding, or it gets socialized and discussed amongst them?
Yeah.
Or is that asking for trouble?
Well, I mean, one of the ways that if we had unlimited time and energy to put into this would be to actually do outreach through informational meetings. So like somebody said, well, what about having a table, do some tabling at the harvest market?
Yeah.
As an example of that. And we could do that if we have volunteers who are willing to go to that and sit at a table and talk to people. And then you have the cover sheet, and you have the survey available as hard copy, and just be available to answer people's questions and chat informally about it. I think that's helpful. It could be a lot of work to, think about all the meetings that take place in Underhill, and then try to go to each one of those to explain this. I don't have that kind of time. I'm not contracted for that much time with the town in my role, but.
What if we promoted a meeting, like if we took one of our Thursdays the week before it came out, or if we put it out on a Friday, and we turn this, I know you're making people come to you and you're not gonna get the same exposure, right? But you turn it into like a public information meeting.
I got a comment
I'm
about the
afraid,
information though.
Like 5 people are gonna show up though, to be honest.
Yeah.
But
We can try it. It did get posted. Did you post it? It has been posted for 2 meetings now,
Yeah.
right? The information sheet.
Yes.
So
I mean, it would
it
go
has
on,
been out there.
it would go on Front Porch Forum though, right?
At some point, yeah.
Right, I mean, I feel like a good general way to introduce the topic would be to have a landing page on the town website just dedicated to this project, and then have some basic information, including these handouts available on that page. And then also just give people a heads up through perhaps multiple Front Porch Forum postings that this is a place that they can go and learn more about this project, and encourage people to go look at it. And then just tease that we're gonna be doing some tabling perhaps at upcoming events, and that this will be something that will be discussed at planning commission meetings. And if anybody thinks of other opportunities that they think would be good to present this information in a more conversational forum, that we can pursue those as they come up. I feel like to Brian's point that he just made, it's a stretch to think that if we made this the main topic on a planning commission agenda, that we would get a big turnout, because we probably wouldn't.
We got like 10 people for town plan meetings,
Yeah.
right?
No, there's never big turnouts.
No.
I think
Like, and that was the town plan for the next 8 years.
I feel like we're getting a little ahead of ourselves anyway, because it seems to me like it'd be more appropriate to have a meeting after they do Jericho does the engineering study.
Yeah, so that's-
And then we would actually have some real answers to maybe possible cost or, how it's going to affect us. I think people are really going to struggle with thinking about spending more money on their taxes, okay?
Yep.
And if we had some more information about what the state funding portion could possibly be, and federal grants and state grants, if we had some concrete numbers that we could work with, that it might be better to wait till then before we have it go to a public meeting.
I agree with the general
I just feel
consensus that I feel like folks are lining up against. The intent of doing this was just to get a general feeling if the community would be interested in pursuing it any further.
Right.
Like my personal
We're not
opinion
necessarily
right now
trying to
with
sell
zero
it right
information is like no. Like,
That's.
Our
kind
no
of where
right
I
now.
think,
Yeah.
which I think 90% of people are gonna be like, because like, dude, I just got hit with taxes like 3 years in a row. Now you
Yeah.
put in something that's gonna cost a lot of money that really doesn't benefit 90% of the whole town. It benefits like some developer that may come into town and decide to build 40 new units. Because if it benefits like 5 existing people to potentially tie into, that still doesn't really like make the overall project viable from a cost standpoint, because you're not gonna recoup. Like, that's what I wanna know. Like, okay, this thing says it can house 40 new units. Okay, but what's the cost to build it and do all the infrastructure to these new units, wherever they may be, because that's a distance, you have to pay for that. Like, what's that cost viability of like, okay, these new 40 units are bringing in X amount of tax dollars, you're gonna pay this thing off in 5 years or 150 years. Like,
Yeah.
I wanna know those numbers
Right.
before I even.
When will those metrics be available? Do we know?
It's not gonna be real soon. We know that much. I mean, the preliminary engineering study, is gonna get a lot more hard data about what the system look like, where it would be built, what the components of it would be, and what the overall cost would be. But, the state is months away from releasing rules about how the CHIPS program financing is going to work, and how towns would apply to a specific project. And I think that's what would get at what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Because, it could be that between state grants and CHIPS tax increment financing, the general obligation bond to the town taxpayers would be very low. It might be, we're already talking about, 10% of total project cost would be allocated to Underhill to build the thing in the first place, and then the infrastructure here, minus the how much could be paid for through the CHIPS program. It might end up being a pretty insignificant amount that on the general tax rate. But we won't know those numbers for a while.
Right.
Probably at the end of next year at the earliest.
I think we need to clarify also that when we present this to the community, that everybody understands it's only going to serve 40 houses probably, and probably the potential for expansion and adding a large amount of units or homes or whatever you want is minimal. It's not going to add 10 more houses. You could add maybe 30 ADUs or something like that. But how can we present that information in a clear way so that that the community sees what the effect will be on just the village center?
Like how do we present to the community the idea that this thing benefits the whole community, not just that little spot there?
Right.
Are
I think that's a hard sell right there.
But we're trying to.
But is there some kind of argument that could be made for that? I don't know what it would be.
But are we in phase one, unless I'm misunderstanding, you and Tavita are just trying to flesh out a general vibe, for lack of a
I
better.
think it's gonna be a hard no.
Well,
Adamant. This is good information, man, but what do you really,
Well, sorry, to be clear, Tavid and I volunteered.
yeah, no, that's
We were not saying this is a good idea. Actually, what they have planned, I'm not on board for either, right? But what we discussed as a group
So if you got this
was
today,
that we should explore if it would make sense for us
Yeah.
for the town of Underhill
Right.
to do something. And the whole point of doing this, the idea was, let's just see if anybody would be interested in that before we burn any brain
I know, but-
cells
Yeah, there you go.
talking about
The 8 of us,
Good
9 of us
idea.
know way more than the rest of the town, and we're already like,
See, but I actually
So-
think my main concern with
Well,
this
we're not putting the
survey-
details of what Jericho is talking about doing.
No, I
Right?
know.
That's actually
They
my
don't
main-
know that they're trying to build it on the middle school.
See,
They
that's-
don't know that they want to build 100 units or whatever.
That's my
it is.
main concern with the survey, actually. It's funny, I think, well, I don't know, I want to say what you were thinking, that's not my place, but you have too much information. I actually think if we send out the survey as is, I think the bias will skew too overly positive. Because I'm not saying it's largely gonna be, I just think you might get a higher supportive number than you actually
But
would
it's,
if people knew a few more key facts. For me,
so it should have.
I might add 2 questions to this, which is why I was saying, what do we think the purpose is? If the purpose is to get an early tone, then I might ask a specific question, because in 5, you can circle things you're concerned about. But I almost might have a question saying if Underhill had to, this isn't the wording, but if Underhill had to issue a bond to pay for a portion of this and it would increase your taxes, would you support it? Yes or no? That might be a terrible survey question. I don't know.
Well,
But I think you get a
you want an
sense,
honest
and the middle
reaction,
school,
don't you?
that's
if you want
why-
that information, you're getting false.
and I would mention
Yeah,
the middle
positive.
school too. I would say
Yeah.
something like numerous sites, or maybe this isn't true, because you don't want to say it's been decided, but one possible site that's been, maybe that's how a survey expert would write
Is where
it.
you
One
can-
possible site is that has been suggested for the septic field is the school playground, how would you feel about that? Because I'm guessing you're gonna get a lot of like, I hate that.
So I thought about that, and I just wasn't sure if we wanted to be seen as trying to torpedo.
No, I just think,
Jericho plan.
no, but I think I understand that.
It's our town. Like,
No, but I
like
think we
that's
should
a
be-
spot for us, and
We
that's
should
not
be
a spot.
honest. I don't think we should be seen as trying to promote
I
it
agree.
or
I agree.
torpedo
I
it, but we
agree.
should be honest about what we know. And that's why I think we should be careful with the wording, like one proposed site or one site that has been suggested. You know, we shouldn't, we don't want Jericho to get in and be like, oh, they suck, they're trying to, but I do think if Jericho gets it, they should say like, oh, well, this is tough but fair.
Yeah.
Right?
Have they
Like,
put together a survey yet? I wonder.
They did.
They did one.
And
They did a survey.
did you guys read that or?
Yeah, they got it.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
I'm not in the loop on this.
So really, it's not a
It
quantitative
was-
survey, it's
it
a
was
it's a
not
qualitative survey.
Super
Yes,
supportive.
I think that's right.
I mean, my sense was just that their planning group is like, they're trying to figure out how they're gonna get their units in for
For that.
the plan.
They're super pro.
And they're just like, they have a lot of folks that are like, no, and it just seemed like the easiest place was to put it in Riverside.
Yeah.
On the school property.
Well, and I mean, from an engineering point of view, I'm not an expert on this by any means, but, during these engineering studies, I mean, the engineers are going around and they're doing test pits in various locations and they're trying to identify which sites would perk so that, if you've actually made an elaborate plan to install a leach field in an area, that you can have pretty strong confidence that it's going to work and not fail in a short amount of time, because you don't make that kind of investment without having that confidence.
No, it'll work.
I mean, at this point, I don't think they're that deep into it. They're probably just looking at overlays of like, this is a flood zone, this is a wetlands,
Yeah,
this
exactly.
is, subsoil type whatever, and they're just like, okay, this area in this areas, the soil works for that.
Right.
Whether the town wants it there or not, it's a whole other thing.
Or how much money you want to set aside for the 73 lawsuits you received.
Yeah, I mean, no matter what you do, treatment plants stink. And if you want a rotten egg stink by your school when you're watching your kids play sports, like, I guess, man, but.
But it's not a
Oh,
treatment.
you
they're
won't
not
smell
safe.
it.
It's not
just
a
a
treatment
leach
plant. It's an underground leach field.
Yeah.
It is, but the biofilters, for something that big, you're gonna have all kinds of like nitrogen diffusion and bio pads and stuff, and those things stink. It gets warm, they smell. Like,
Yeah.
every single one I've been to, because I do it, they smell. Especially in the summer when it's hot and humid,
Really?
they smell. Yeah. You just can't, there's bacteria eating poop, like it's gonna stink.
Well, my 2 cents is for these purposes, if we're gonna do the survey, I just think it might get an overly, I'm not saying it's gonna get a net positive result. I just think it may get an overly positive result if we don't. I think we should mention nicely, honestly, those 2 things.
So, sorry, what is the question that would?
I would have a
mention-
separate question on taxes versus
Yep,
just
I got
like
that
I'm
one.
concerned about, and the other one would be some sort of wording around, one site that has been suggested for the leach field is the school field. Would you be supportive of that? No, but that's the honest thing,
To
right?
be honest about it and say,
Be
yeah, would
honest.
you agree with this being in the school? Even though it smells.
And honestly, I think that's, maybe let's not put in David's lunch.
Oh,
I mean, I actually think that would be a great feedback for Jericho.
Yeah, well, because it's 9,000 gallons per day, especially that close to the.
Yeah, but a leach
like, you
field
have to
doesn't
do.
smell.
No,
Oh.
a leach field doesn't, but 9,000 gallons per day kicks you into a whole other levels of treatment, like pre-treatment, before it goes into leach field.
Yeah.
So there's pre-treatment, soakers and, sand,
I mean, if you
filters, all that kind of stuff, and those things stink, because they're just moving water with bacteria in it.
So is that like a
And they
yes,
have
no
exhaust fans,
question?
so.
I think it's a
I mean,
simple
they have
yes,
carbon
no.
filters.
One location
If you don't change
suggested
it,
is Browns
Right.
River property.
Yeah.
Does that sound like a great idea?
No, I would just say, would you,
Yes or no?
would you support,
This location.
would you
Building-
support that
building
as a
a leach field on this
location,
location.
blah, blah, blah.
Okay.
I mean, honestly, if
I
I'm
like it.
Jericho, I would want to know if 90%, if they didn't ask that question themselves,
Yeah.
I mean, that's
Like if
shame
their
on
kids
them,
go on
right?
the
Like
team,
they should want to know if 90% of the people hate that plan, right? Like, which I assume they will. right? I mean, who's gonna support that?
Or you could even say, the smell is no worse than a farm, field.
But ultimately, the goal is you're trying to create awareness with the
Too
survey,
much information.
awareness.
That's one,
Yeah, I think so.
that's one.
There could be a side
Okay.
benefit of creating the resistance.
I mean, awareness, like real awareness, right?
Right.
Like, not just like an overinflated positive.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, just, and to the point of the, the creating awareness and understanding that doesn't exist now. So in the overview, I added this paragraph here when I was working on this the other day. Because I wanted people to understand the nexus between having community wastewater capacity and the possibility of building housing. Because that's really the whole
That's-
point.
yeah,
That's
that's
the entire
powerful.
whole point of this, is that, the idea of some homeowner buying a piece of land or subdividing a piece of land with a deep lot
Yeah,
and making it available as a housing lot, and say, oh, by the way, you have to build your own septic system, and it's gonna add $30,000 to $50,000 to the price tag of whatever you're gonna build on this new housing lot. It's like, well, forget it, I can barely afford the land and the construction cost on a small house as it is.
I've been hearing like 60, 70,
Really?
the sand.
Ours was
sand is
60.
insane.
For what, for a septic system?
They keep going.
You could build one for 10,000.
No, I know what the
You
mound
could-
system
Not the
is.
mounds.
Well, 20, 30,000.
no,
Or you could have a pre-treatment plant, which is like 50 or 60
ours was 60. And
Just for a
it's,
mound,
yeah,
yeah.
for a mound without a
sand-
pre-treatment.
Yeah, the sand right now is like ridiculous.
Well,
I've heard that, like, out of that 60, like 40 of it's just sand.
Really?
Yeah,
and
These are the pressurized
excavation.
systems?
because it comes out of like one pit in New Hampshire or something like that and gets trucked all the way over here.
I think if the guiding light is awareness for the survey, yes, makes perfect sense. But I do agree with Brian. We have to be as honest and forthright as possible, because that's what we want to create, is trust through awareness.
Yeah. And I have very limited experience with this again, but when the survey, similar preliminary engineering survey was done in Charlotte for a system that hadn't been built yet in the West Village to serve the municipal complex, the engineer was tasked in part with identifying various locations where a leach field could go that would provide sufficient capacity. And I think Dave Marshall came up with like 4 or 5 places. So it wasn't just a single spot. It was, these are the places where it could go, with various costs depending on distance from where the actual equipment would be located, the pump stations and all that. And they ended up choosing to develop only one of those 5 sites right away, and it was the furthest one away from the municipal complex. And so they had to build like literally a half mile of force mains and multiple pumping stations to make it work. It was not cheap, but it got the job done, and it provided sufficient capacity. So, we don't know how the preliminary engineering study is going to work out, but I think it would be appropriate to, circling back to Brian's point, that, if we know that there have been some sites identified, including on the middle school property, that, we should say that, and then there's more to know, and more will be known after the study.
Well, not only that, like if what we're getting reserved is for 40-ish units for the study, like what, does our town plan have a place relatively close to where the proposed location is to create 40 units? That's the
No.
question too.
Stuff would have to get torn down and replaced.
yeah, it's like somebody could tear a house down and maybe build a fourplex or something.
Yeah.
But
So again, you're building
there's-
But we don't have
a system
vacant
for
lots.
this to build like this potentially, and then the rest of it sits like unused for 10, 20 years till the next guy buys a house, tears it down, puts a fourplex on it.
But can existing homeowners tie in?
Yeah.
They can, but
Yeah.
who's gonna want
But
to?
it-
Because if they have to pay for that out of their own pocket.
You
Well,
would,
the idea was if their system had problems.
Exactly.
and
Well, you would
fix
have
it up,
versus
then
paying
they
60
could
grand.
pay to.
say that.
You
tap
would
into
have
it
versus
instead
paying
of doing
60
that.
grand. maybe,
No, it's
if
for our
you had the-
ADU that we paid 60.
Oh, I got it. No.
But either way, like if
Wow.
it's at the middle school and like, one of the houses a mile
No,
up River
I know what you
Road
mean.
wants to tie in, that's a mile of sewer line that has to go in.
Presumably what would happen is systems fail,
Oh,
basically.
yeah.
Yeah.
Hopefully, there would be some sort of trunk lines that would be. put
Yeah,
in, and
I think
multiple
that's a
people would
given.
be
There'd be one
It
along
wouldn't
Park
be
Street,
like-
there'd be one along 15.
I have one other very ministerial comment. I think on this memo, my 2 cents is what I think we should, could you scroll down a tiny bit? Just like right there. I would make it, because it's in the project costs, but this is mostly pure self-interest, so no one can say the planning commission is biased. I would have, under potential benefits to Underhill, I would have a section called like, not potential risks or something, but this is on the fly. So like potential negatives, basically. And I would break out some of those things from the project, like how it could result, like, you know, how it could require a bond vote for Underhill residents, like, which is down in project costs. I would make that a bullet point. I would make the middle school, the potential middle school site a bullet point, so that we have potential benefits, potential negatives. Negatives isn't the right word. I don't know, synonym for negative. But like
Potential setbacks,
potential,
Challenges.
yeah, potential challenges. That's it.
But is there value in knowing if folks are supportive of doing it in general, just not at the middle school?
Yeah. I think if you wanted to,
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
I don't know where that would be, but Jericho had looked at other sites, and it might be like,
Yeah.
hey, you don't want it anywhere near
That's why
that.
I wanted to break
That's
out.
part of Underhill, guys, but if Underhill says,
Yeah.
you know, no, middle school, not cool, but in general, yeah, this could work if we can
That's what I
figure out how to make it low cost, no cost.
That's why I thought your questions were really good, and I just thought we should add 2 more, because you'll get like, I think you'll get the results you want from what we were trying to get to with what you already have, and then it's like at the end you're saying like, okay, but what if it increased taxes? Yes or no? Okay, but what if it had to go on the middle school lot? Yes or no?
and that's on the, because I know the town line goes like through the school somewhere, so that we're talking about like the Underhill side of the school fields that it would go on, or is it still on the Jericho side?
Of where the school is? Wait.
Yeah, where this treatment plant and leach field would go, is it still in Jericho, but in the middle school property, or is it on the Underhill
No.
side?
Well, I think the ID school is in Jericho, right? And the middle school is in
I thought there was some
Underhill.
weird thing, like the line literally went through the schools, it's in some
And
area.
I would think it's an Underhill, just because we have our.
The only reason I'm asking is because like how much say do we honestly have, if they're reserving it on the Jericho side, like how much say do we have,
Well,
it's not our town.
The whole school board would have to, wouldn't the school board have
Yes.
to give them?
It's up to
approval
the school
do
board
that?
to decide.
He did comment that his feeling was that the school board's reaction has been positive so far.
Yes.
Interesting.
I was like, they're not getting voted back. I mean, Jericho sends their kids to that school too.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't think they would.
Jericho than Underhill, man.
I don't think they-
I mean, they're gonna get sued if they try to do that, let's be honest, like in 2 seconds.
So the 2 points for the downsides, the potential downsides, it's like, it might be somewhere you don't want it, like.
I think we should leave this.
And it could potentially increase your taxes, but is that what you were saying, Brian?
Yeah, but I'm trying to purposely, I'm not trying to be cute with the questions, I think the questions you have are
No,
great.
I had the questions already, but
Yeah.
you suggested this new section.
Oh, I just think we should have 2 sections that offset each other.
Pros and
like
cons.
Pros and cons.
Yeah.
Like pros and cons.
I think
right?
that's fair.
In the
I know,
memo.
I was just like,
Yeah.
Yeah, I think
great,
we're,
what was you had a couple of brainstorming ideas for the cons.
oh, they were the same too.
Yeah.
It was
Okay.
the taxes and the school.
Okay.
I don't have any genius
Potential
ideas.
location being this.
You-
Yeah.
So we're putting the possible location in there, or we're not?
Yes,
Yeah.
but we're not
I disagree
saying-
with that.
no, but we're not saying,
We don't
we're
know where
saying-
it's gonna be.
Exactly.
we're saying one possible location is
Has
this.
been
Would you
suggested.
support that as a location? Yes or no?
It's in the
So you
report,
could
man.
support all of it and then just say, you could say like, oh, I love this idea, but I don't want it in the school.
Yeah.
So you get a reaction for both.
And because it's in the report, we have to be forthcoming, because if someone were to read the report, they would say, why didn't you put this in?
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
what
right.
I'm worried about. In like a
Yeah.
year, someone's like, why didn't you mention in your
Yeah.
survey that
Yeah,
it
you
could
knew
be at the
about it, you
school?
said nothing.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay.
That's the whole political.
I'll say Roy told me not to do
He was being
Roy
deceptive yet
it.
again.
Dunphy, do you know his address? Let me give it to you.
Thanks, Brian.
So Brian, were you saying it's an additional question?
I think we're gonna add 2.
Because
Yeah, I've got-
I had it as a, something for the information.
No,
sheet.
they're both. There's,
Yeah.
and so there's 2 additional, by the way, this is just my
Yeah.
2 cents, like 2
No,
additional
you're-
questions in
I
the
agree.
survey and then do the pros and cons in the memo.
Okay.
Just so
Your
no
name's
one
engraved
can
on this
complain.
one.
that it
It's
wasn't.
you, Tavid, and Zach. That's
I wonder why they're not, I wonder if they're looking at the park. I mean, you could put it,
at Mills.
or that
Mills
land.
River? What about the conserved land?
Yeah,
It's right next to
it's
Mills.
conserved.
Yeah, I mean, that would be a perfect place for
There's
it.
nothing there.
Yeah,
It's not even,
I
people
mean, that would
don't
be,
even walk there.
Oh, yeah. Right along the 15, you mean?
Yeah.
I wonder if they're looking at that. I wonder if that's a possibility. It seems like a,
No,
They
next
probably have to
next
get
to
him.
Mills Riverside
Oh,
Park.
like that.
If you
Oh,
just, if you go down 15, yeah.
They'd have to get Jericho Underhill Land Trust to
Oh,
let them
go
do
along
it.
with that, yeah. well,
But that's probably, further away from their,
well, whatever they do, that,
4-story,
And
300 unit complex they're
Uphill
planning to
field a
build.
little bit, so, and crossing a river.
Oh,
Oh, true.
but whatever they do, they'll have to buy an easement anyway, right? If you're gonna put a leach field in where the school, fund the school, you have to pay the school money to do it, obviously, right? So,
Yeah, because that was a public.
and that's not a small amount of money, I'm sure.
okay.
Okay,
Anything else?
I got it.
Thank you, Zach.
I think, and then Tavid and I started putting some thoughts behind how we would distribute this.
Yeah, that was
The
great.
main idea is like we're gonna use, he and I need to align. I didn't realize that we had both doubled down on this, but we'll use the technology to put together the survey. We'll create links, we'll distribute through a variety of forums like Front Porch. We think we can get everybody's addresses and we can do direct mail. If we're able to get email addresses, we can do direct email and hit them, and we can hit them multiple times, to let them know and remind them that the deadline's coming up. And then we just have to agree like when we want to open the survey, how long we want to leave it open, and then it's a matter of reviewing the analytics afterwards and we can have our chat and figure out what we want to do after that.
What are you setting it up in?
I am planning on using Google.
Google Form. Awesome.
Google Forms, and then you can just, apparently you can get real-time updates on the
Yep.
analytics and sheets.
Super
So-
easy.
And everybody, is familiar with Google.
Forms, yeah. Yeah, I've never used it to actually create a survey, but I have used SurveyMonkey, but I'll take your word for it, that it's easy to use. I've never used the back end of it. I've certainly filled out my share of forms, but never looked at the back end to identify what the responses are and how you slice and dice them. Because I think one of the most interesting things about the structure of the survey is that you have divided by where people live in town, and you also have, whether they're in the service area for the system, where they might choose to switch off of their individual lot septic to a connection to the system, if there's a marked demand for that. I think that's really interesting to look at that. So,
This is just a really quick question. Do we know if we know the exact population, and depending on how many people respond within Underhill, that would be an interesting analytic against it just there. Even if we get if we get at least 15% response rate, that's really good
yeah.
as a goal, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, for sure. I think we got 10% on the town plan, didn't we? We got like 300 people or something to fill out I was on housing.
I bet we could
I
get
was on
more.
housing.
I
I think
bet we could get more, because we can tagline
this is
it.
a much better
We can
plan.
tagline it. Waste treatment facility at Browns River.
Oh, come on, you're cheating. You're definitely gonna get a higher percentage, right?
But you might not like the result.
Are you gonna have a lot of exclamation points in the? Okay.
And an ellipse.
So I think the core decision now is green light this to be launched soon versus wait. And wait is like not really clear what the time frame would be to when to launch it. So
I don't care.
You don't.
I don't, I just think that the potential for misinformation is there, but I also think that not a whole lot of people are gonna care a whole lot about this right now, so. If there's a little bit of misinformation because we misspoke somewhere, then so be it, but.
I think public awareness is super low of this unless you like.
Especially
volunteer in
right
some
now.
way.
That was a big part of the reason that we.
I'm doing tons of surveys. I work in public radio and people want it. They want the information, they want access, and they want this kind of grassroots information right
Okay.
now. So,
Well, what about if we get
I
the
wonder why.
revised version
Yeah.
for next meeting?
Yeah.
From Zach and Tavid, and then we make a decision at the next meeting, give it a final read through and,
Yeah, the
come up
schedule
with
that
a
I had
distribution.
put in here was, look, let's open it up for 2 weeks. We'll launch it. It's aggressive because we're gonna shift it back to September 15th. And then we do an analysis that first week of October, for the first few days of October, so we could review at the October 2nd meeting, which is a month from now, but maybe we just shift all that back to the last meeting of October.
Yeah.
We're planning to do the review.
Yeah, we'd still have the survey out before the holidays and.
Yeah.
yeah.
I don't know.
I think that's the important thing is that it be done before the holidays.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you pause at that point and assess where we're at.
Okay,
So we take PC, like vacation from Thanksgiving till January or something like that?
first of all, that would, make my holiday party go away, so that's
Oh, we can't do that. That's important.
No, what I meant was we have party meetings from Thanksgiving until the first of January.
Party meetings. I like that.
Party planning meeting, then
Yeah.
party.
Where's
There
the
you go.
fridge in this place?
Right upstairs. All right, last item is, does anyone have any comments or questions on the minutes from last meeting? From the public hearing, I should say. If not, does someone, go ahead, sorry, Bart.
One comment.
Yes, sir?
On page 5, they have a bunch of comments by commissioners, and there is an unknown commissioner whose name is Bart, and then the last name is, there's nobody on the commission. Yeah,
Okay, so,
and I didn't make that comment, so I don't know who it is.
all right, well,
didn't make the
I actually made a few edits since I first posted these, and I did
Oh.
add back some of the names that were just unknown, or just that were, the person that were misspelled. So I might have gotten some of this wrong, but there is a more recent version that has been posted. Can you
okay.
point to which section it was that?
It was page 5, right about the middle of the page.
Okay.
It says Bart Tomlinson.
Noted
Commissioner
waiver.
Bart Tomlinson noted that a waiver would require,
The DRB review, that wasn't your point?
No,
Okay.
I don't
Someone
remember who
else
made
is.
it.
Where said the landowner noted that a waiver would require a deed?
Oh, that was, I asked that question,
Okay.
I think.
Well,
He's like, I'll take ownership.
We'll
It was
take
about,
it.
was it about the waiver? And then that, yeah, I
That
asked
was
that
a
question.
and then Larry said the landowners would have to pay a fee and da. That's the.
Yeah.
Okay, so there, that's wrong. Okay,
Thank you.
thank you, Commissioner Bart. Does anyone want to make a motion to approve these minutes?
Motion to approve.
Zach, second.
I second.
Jen, all in favor?
I,
Unanimous. Thank you. Which I believe takes us to everyone's favorite agenda item.
We just,
Yep.
we didn't get to the last item.
Oh, what
We
a
can
minute.
Take that up.
Oh, yeah, that's gonna have to be in the
Priorities.
sorry. That was like 40
Updates.
minutes or something.
Yeah.
I think we have our next meeting basically
Yeah.
scheduled out there.
Yes. Okay.
David, is there any motion you might enjoy making this evening?
Motion to adjourn.
Yes, is there a second?
Second.
Bart, all in favor?
Aye.
I always try to suck at that one.